My name is Dirk Schuberts. I am a professor of youth and social policy here at Queen's University Belfast. I also direct the Young Life and Times survey, which is the research instrument we've used to collect the data for today. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to a first-class lineup today. Minister, we are delighted to have you here, and thank you for addressing our audience today. We also expect Minister Long, who runs slightly late. We have the mental health champion here today, Siobhan. Welcome, nice to see you. And we have the Children's Commissioner here with a young person. The fact that all these people are here makes me really hopeful that we can get joint action underway in relation to young people's experiences on social media. I hope the conversation today will only be a start. And I'm very confident with the interest that we have today that there's goodwill in government and elsewhere to really address the serious issues that some of the young people experience in social media. So I have to take you through the safety procedures in this magnificent cabin that you find yourself in today. So I've turned my phone on flight mode. I'd really appreciate if you do that too. Our fire drills take place on Wednesday. Since it's a Monday, we don't expect any fire drills today, but should there be any alarm going off, we have emergency exits here and emergency exits there. Please look behind you just in case the closest emergency exit is behind you. I haven't handed out any vests or whistles because we don't expect any floods today, but we have some merchandise that you're welcome to take. I shall introduce you briefly to Young Life and Times before I hand over to Bernie McNally, who's the chair of the Safety Board Northern Ireland, who have kindly funded this report. Young Life and Times is an annual survey of 16-year-olds that we've set up in 2003, and that's been running ever since on an annual basis. It's a randomized survey of 16-year-olds in Northern Ireland. And the purpose of the survey is to inform policymaking for and with young people. We also run a survey of adults called Life and Times, and we run a survey of P7 children that we refer to later on as well, the Kids Life and Times survey. The subject areas change every year. Some questions are asked on a regular basis, some questions are asked for the first time, and the online questions and social media questions that we asked in this year were asked for the first time. The survey is very widely used for policy making, for tackling paramilitarism, shared education policy making, good relations, ending violence against women and girls, and also for monitoring children's understanding and experience of children's rights. So we very much hope that the survey results will be taken very seriously in relation to the online experiences and social media experiences that young people have. In terms of the 2025 survey, which is what we are talking about today, it only completed, so the fieldwork for the survey was undertaken around Easter time of this year. We had 2,129 16-year-olds who completed the survey, a response rate of 38%, which is an excellent response rate for the survey of this kind. And we included questions on illegal and harmful behaviors that young people experience in social media for the first time. The survey really coincided with the enactment of the Online Safety Act, which makes it a perfect opportunity to set a baseline for young people's experiences and to visit that on the regular basis. Very quickly on the Online Safety Act, the purpose of the Act is to protect adults and young people better when they use social media. It puts a range of duties on the social media companies and on the online providers, and responsibilities to protect people that use the services better. There is a legal responsibility now for them to protect young people and children to make sure that they don't access harmful behavior, and they have to evidence what steps they take to remove harmful behavior if it occurs online. So it's a really important act, and as you will see later on, we will have some of the experience of young people in relation to harmful and criminal behavior that they experience. And that's exactly what we are going to talk about today. At this point, I would like to invite Bernie McNally, who is the independent chair of the Safeguarding Board Northern Ireland, to say a few words about the research and then invite the Minister to talk. Thank you, Bernie.
Thank you, Derek. Good afternoon, everyone, and you're all very welcome to this event. As Derek said, my name is Bernie McNally and I'm the Independent Chair of the Safeguarding Board for Northern Ireland. And just so you know what the Safeguarding Board is, it's an interagency partnership which brings together all the key statutory bodies that have responsibility for safeguarding. That's police, social services, health, education, probation, youth justice, all of the main statutory bodies. And we also have a representation on our board from key voluntary and community sector bodies. So our role is to try and to bring everybody together to try to get more collaborative working, to work on things that are cross-departmental, that are cross-agency, and online safety is key to one of our key strategic priorities in that regard. So we look at what we can do collectively, because everybody trying to deal with these big issues separately doesn't really work. So we need education, schools, health, social services, police, all combining and working collaboratively, and the role of the Safeguarding Board is to do that. So I'd like to welcome you all to this event today, and I'd like to particularly welcome the Children's Commissioner Chris and Molly, because this is all about hearing the voice of young people. Molly, and you have been a great advocate for young people. I heard you speaking at the Victim Support Conference a while ago, and I was really impressed. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you today, Molly. But we are delighted to have our Minister, we are very welcome Minister to our event, and Minister Nesbitt has been a great supporter. He's responsible for this Safeguarding Board, but he also has been a great supporter of the Safeguarding Board and has been very keen to get involved in all our campaigns, and always says yes when we invite him to things, and always says yes when we ask him to say a few words on camera to talk directly to young people. So that's really great for us, Minister, and it shows great leadership, and we thank you for that. We're also lucky to have two ministers, although Minister Long just isn't with us at the moment. She'll be one of our speakers today, and will be with us shortly. Very busy time. I think this is the first day back at school, sir, so that's going to be difficult for you all today to get back into the way of things again. So you're very welcome. I also am looking forward to hearing from all the speakers in relation to online safety. I suppose one of the things we would emphasise is that online is positive. We're all online nowadays. I was trying to book some Ryanair flights yesterday. It took me about 3 hours, but saying no more. I was in between watching Rory trying to win a championship, so it was all good yesterday. So we know that online is really good, and we want to promote that, and we want to encourage young people to learn online, to be online, and to communicate and connect with others. But we also know that child abuse is child abuse, and we need to be very mindful of that, and that people who want to do harm to children can use that medium very, very successfully. And we have to stay in front of the bad guys. We have to try and make sure that we're as aware of what's going on, that we are as technically proficient as we can be, and that we are aware of all the issues that young people face on a day-to-day basis. And our job is to try and do what we can to work with children, young people, to keep them safe. So today's conference is really important. I'm really delighted that the Minister can be here, and I'm going to ask him to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody. And thank you so much for the invitation, and also for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. As Bernie says, as Minister, I'm responsible, or I sponsor the Safeguarding Board, also responsible, of course, for the online safety strategy. When I was young, my parents worried about me a lot. They worried about me when I was at school, in case I was being bullied. They worried about me when I was playing rugby, in case I broke my leg. They worried about me when I was going into town, because I grew up through what we so euphemistically call the Troubles. And I will never forget the day after school I was supposed to get the big red number 16 bus into town, meet my dad, and go to SS Mears for my new rugby boots. And when I got home, Mum said, "Dad's just off the phone. I'm afraid," he says, "it's too dangerous and your trip is off." That was 60 years ago, and I'm not over it yet. But when I was at home, that's when they relaxed, because I was safe. So people of a certain age will remember the great philosopher Mary Hopkins and her famous words, "Those were the days, my friend, and we thought they would never end." But they have. Our children and young people aren't just using this new technology, they are shaping it. They're creating, they're connecting, and they're exploring in ways we never imagined when I was a youth. That digital world is deeply embedded in every young person's life. And it offers incredible opportunities. We know that, to learn, to play, to grow. But these opportunities come with real risks, which bring us all here today. So the Screens, Safety and Social Media Report, What Young People in Northern Ireland Are Telling Us, which was commissioned by the Safeguarding Board and undertaken by Queen's University, it's offering us a vital insight into how our young people are navigating the online landscape. It's drawing on the data from the Kids Life and Times Survey and the Young Life and Times Survey. It's research which allows us to hear directly from young people about their experiences of social media. What I think makes this report so powerful is that it's grounded in the lived experience of young people themselves. So it gives us a baseline from which we can measure our future success in terms of any initiatives we make. But it also challenges us to listen, to reflect, and ultimately to act. This report helps us understand not just how young people are using online platforms, but how they perceive the dangers, how they feel safe, and I think crucially, how willing and able they are to report harmful or criminal behaviour online. Now, we all know there are risks with being online, but you can't argue about the immense value the online world offers children and young people. And that online safety strategy acknowledges that. We've come to expect instant access to information. We've come to expect seamless connection with people right across the globe. And that's something that was unimaginable to me growing up. But it is a tightly strung balancing act, empowering children and young people to embrace the power of the internet while yet keeping them safe in the process. And that's a bit top-down, so we also need to be bottom-up by enabling them to keep themselves safe. And we're all aware of the consequences of not getting that balance right. Sometimes, sadly, it has the most tragic of consequences. The Online Safety Act, which has been introduced by Westminster, is a vital step forward, in my view. It gives Ofcom, the independent regulator, the power to act against all social media and tech companies who are accessible to UK users, regardless of where those companies are based. And the Act places legal duties on tech companies, especially social media platforms and search engines, to protect children from serious harm. So I'm talking about grooming, exploitation, pornography, self-harm, bullying, hate. It's quite the list, isn't it? Platforms must use robust age checks and offer clear ways to report abuse. And I'm pleased to note Ofcom will be joining the expert panel for this afternoon's question and answer session. Great panel, by the way. Bimpy and Chris and Siobhan. I will be sitting in the Assembly chamber on day one, and I will be wondering who's talking more sense. Here in Northern Ireland, this legislation complements and supports our own online safety strategy. That has prevention and education at its heart, with a clear vision. Every child should be able to enjoy the educational, the social and the economic benefits of the online world. And they should be empowered to do so safely, confidently and without fear. The updated action plan, which was published recently, renews our collective commitment with practical steps to embed online safety into schools, into youth services and into family support systems. And the Safeguarding Board are the lead coordinators of the action plan, and I want to thank them, and in particular their safety coordinator, Orla O'Hagan, for what's been achieved to date, and please pass on my thanks, Bernie. The implementation of the strategy and action plan is being supported by a number of government departments, and that's through a well-established cross-departmental implementation group. It's chaired by my department. It's overseen by the Children and Young People's Strategic Child Protection Group. Children shouldn't have to navigate harm alone. We must, as adults, stay informed, stay curious, and help them understand the opportunities and the risks. And one of the strongest safeguards we can offer our young people is open and honest conversations with trusted adults. And while it's never too early to talk about online safety, parents and carers need the right support to make those conversations meaningful, effective and impactful. The Safeguarding Board's Online Safety Hub is a source of trusted, free, accessible and up-to-date content spanning a whole range of relevant topics. There's advice and resource for children, for young people, and for parents and for carers. It provides core online safety messages, and it acts as a mechanism to access support where that is needed. It's an invaluable resource, and I'd encourage all of you to take a look at what it has to offer if you haven't already. Today's research highlights the stark truth that too many of our young people have reported encountering illegal or harmful behaviours on social media. The most common include the sharing of offensive or obscene content, posting material without consent, and online stalking. The data also shows that certain groups are disproportionately affected. Young women, same-sex attracted young people, those with disabilities or long-term illnesses, and those from financially disadvantaged backgrounds, they're all more likely to experience harm online. We know many young people who experience online abuse don't report it, and really we have to ask ourselves why. We need to understand this issue. And the recent criminal case of Alexander McCartney is a chilling reminder of such behaviour. From his bedroom in Newry, posing as a teenage girl online, manipulating and blackmailing children into sending explicit images. I find this horrific and shocking in equal measure. I still think this is almost unbelievable. An estimated 3,500 children worldwide was his reach, and yet only four came forward. What does that silence tell us? I think it speaks about fear, about shame, about stigma. Powerful, powerful barriers to seeking help and reporting people who need to be dealt with. Many children worry they won't be believed or that they'll be blamed, and we have to attack those stigmas. So recently this month, the Trust Trap campaign by the Safeguarding Board and the PSNI tackled uncomfortable truths like catfishing, grooming and sextortion, and bringing them into the open. And I do think when you have a problem, the first thing you have to do is publicly name it. It uses paid ads on TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat to reach young people directly. The message is clear and compassionate. You're not to blame, you're not in trouble, you're not alone, and help is available. So as we look ahead, I think our mission is clear. We need to empower young people not just to survive online, but to thrive. And that means giving them the tools to make informed choices, and the confidence to speak up when something feels wrong, and to support them in a way that they know they are never alone. So before I close, I want to extend my sincere thanks to the researchers whose work continues to shine a light on the realities young people face online. Your insights are frankly invaluable. I'd also like to take a moment to recognise the professionals and the educators here today. Your role is absolutely vital. Ultimately, keeping our children and our young people safe online is not the responsibility of one group, as Bernie said. It's a shared mission. And together, we have the power to shape a safer, kinder digital world for our children and our young people. When we combine our efforts, when we work collaboratively, we don't just protect our young people, we empower them. And let's empower them to prosper and to thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. We really appreciate the time and a busy day that you spent coming to us. Now, this report is about young people. And in many ways, the next speaker is the most important speaker today, Molly. And Chris, thank you very much for bringing her along. Molly is a representative on Nikki's Young Persons Advisory Group and will share some of her personal experiences. I saw Molly speaking before at the Victim Support Conference, and I think it will be really important insight and a reminder of the importance of our work that we undertake. Molly, please.
Good morning, everyone. Recently, I was forced to question the role the online world plays in my life when I received a horrifying notification on my phone. I was spending an average of 7 hours a day online. 7 hours, that's nearly 50 hours a week, more than a full-time job, lost to endless doom scrolling on my phone. Shocked by this, I set screen time limits, deleted my addictive apps, and tried to take back control of my time. I'll let you know if it actually works. Without the right knowledge, discipline, and boundaries, the online world can be deeply damaging and addictive, especially for young people. Unrestricted and excessive access can harm our mental health, lower self-esteem, and jeopardise future careers. However, I have also considered how some of those 7 hours a day have been used productively, as the online world has benefited me, helping me with my studies and allowing me to stay instantly connected to friends and family. I've since concluded that as young people who are so involved in the online world, we must be educated on how to use it responsibly and educate each other rather than using the online world to cause harm and damage. Social media can have a profound impact on young people's mental health. While these platforms connect us instantly, they also expose us to constant comparison and pressure to present a perfect life. Scrolling on apps like Instagram or TikTok can feel like viewing a highlight reel of other people's achievements, looks, and lifestyles, creating unrealistic expectations for young people to feel they're not meeting. Over time, this does fuel anxiety, lower self-esteem, and leads to feelings of isolation, despite being connected to hundreds of friends online. As a young person, we cannot simply ignore social media if it proves harmful to our mental health, as it's easy to become isolated and ostracised amongst our peers without these platforms. Thus, it's vital that we are taught and learn how to use them productively and how to manage the content we're consuming and not let screens dictate our lives. As screens and social media become intertwined with young people's lives, we unknowingly create a permanent record of everything we've ever posted, commented, or shared through our digital footprint. And for young people, this can have serious consequences for future careers and job prospects. Employers often check candidates' social media profiles as part of their selection process, and so a single inappropriate post, offensive joke, or careless photo shared years ago can resurface at the worst possible moment, painting a picture of someone that no longer reflects who they are, but can massively impact our futures. What's shared online is out there forever, and whether it's been deleted or reported, it's never truly gone. As a young person only now properly considering my future career, I worry about my classmates and friends, as we all don't know enough about the consequences of sharing media online and would never consider how social media could cost us a dream job or opportunity. The Online Safety Act, hoping to monitor content shared online, couldn't have come at a better time. I can definitely speak for young people when I say the internet, if used incorrectly, can encourage risky or unhealthy behaviours. Whether it's the latest TikTok trend, dieting craze, or most commonly the glorification of violence or substance abuse, within a few clicks it's incredibly easy to find the harmful side of the internet. Algorithms often push more of what users engage with. This means that one click can lead to a flood of damaging content that shapes our attitudes and behaviours without us even realising it. While it's clear the online world can cause real harm, it's also important to recognise that it can be a force of incredible good. In August, I received my A-level results and secured my place at Queen's to study in September. I can honestly say that I would not have been able to achieve this without online learning tools like Quizlet and YouTube. I was able to utilise free revision videos, documentaries and past papers to expand my studies. These online tools condense complex information, help me memorise key facts and manage what seemed like an impossible task. The internet has transformed education, creating a level playing field for students, giving us access to free revision tools that before may have been limited to expensive tutors. Young people are able to reduce the cost of their education by downloading PDFs of textbooks instead of buying expensive ones that end up needing replaced when we start a new topic. The online world can give young people the tools needed to reach their full potential and expand their learning opportunities, and it's important that we recognise this. Social media platforms, messaging apps and video calls allow friendships and family bonds to thrive across distances, providing young people with vital ways to maintain their relationships. For many young people, these platforms provide a sense of belonging and support, especially during difficult times when face-to-face contact isn't available like we faced during COVID. For me and my friends, group chats and calls make it easy to plan days out, stay in contact as we head to different universities, and share updates, keeping us connected between real-life meetups. For young people who feel shy and isolated in person, the online world can be a lifeline for them, where they can find their voice and build confidence. Social media can actually help strengthen real-life friendships and connections rather than replace them. The online world and social media aren't inherently bad, and when used responsibly and with boundaries, they can empower, educate and connect young people in incredible ways. But without limits and awareness, they are deeply harmful, affecting mental health, relationships and future opportunities. I hope that as a young person, more is done to protect and educate us on social media and the online world as it so quickly expands. I believe it's vital for adults in decision-making positions to connect with young people, to understand how we use the online world and how to keep us safe online, rather than trying to control our access to a place we're already so involved in. Thank you.
Well done, Molly, and yeah, it's very difficult to follow a speaker like Molly. That input was brilliant, Molly, so thank you. And I think I should start with the congratulations. You're about to start your own journey in this university next week, and you've told us how the online world helped you in that journey, so I wish you all the best for your university career. But I just wanted to reflect on some of what I heard from the previous speakers, and I want to say Molly talked about doom scrolling, and I think we need to acknowledge that doom scrolling is not symptomatic of young people only. I would have to hold my hand up and say I am guilty of doom scrolling myself, and it is, I would argue, that screen time and the online world is something that we all need to be very conscious of, but I am sometimes concerned that young people feel the brunt of that. We've seen news over the last year about mobile phone bans. In Australia, they've made moves to ban social media for over 16s. So it's a big conversation, but I would say that this conversation is a societal issue. It's not necessarily a young person's issue, and we need to take it seriously. I also wanted just to reflect on, I think Molly, you alluded to it, and maybe Minister Nesbitt did, but there's lots of evidence that we can see with regards to far-right agitators online, and the violence that we saw in June this year, and the violence that we saw last August on our streets. And there's a good school of evidence now to show us that a lot of that was being fueled by online hate. And I suppose it's about making that world, getting the balance right, because Molly talked about the positive role that the online world can play in her life as a student, but also the dangers. And I think as a commissioner and as a father of 4 boys, and I suppose we need to remember that government has a duty to keep children safe in the online world as well as offline, but we need to teach young people what boundaries are, what's a healthy boundary. Those boundaries apply online and offline, and often we can see that the online world can be very toxic, and it can be a place, it's almost like a free-for-all. And Mike talked about Alexander McCartney and the fact that only a minority of his victims were able to, or felt brave enough, or had the resources to report those terrible things that had happened. So I suppose, going back to my script, I just wanted to say how pleased I am to be here today at the launch of this report, and thanks to Dirk and to Young Life and Times and to ARC for the work that they do, and to Bernie and SBNI for the work that you do also. This is, I think it was you said, Bernie, that this report, it's more than a report, it's a call to action. I think it was it Dirk, maybe you said that, one of the two of you said anyway, so I would definitely agree that this piece of work is a call to action, and it tells us that for children the digital world is not an optional extra, it's their everyday reality. So I would describe Molly as a digital native. We as adults are probably digital migrants. We're learning to use this world, we're learning to step into that world, and I suppose as a 40-something, almost 50-something-year-old adult, it's hard to keep up. It's hard to keep up with the newest apps, it's hard to keep up with language, it's hard to keep up with all of that. So we really need to listen to the voices of young people, which this report has done. I wanted just to talk a wee bit about rights, and the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child has made it clear through their General Comment 25. So every so often the UN Committee would pick a topic that they feel is important and they publish a General Comment. So General Comment 25 was published in 2021, and it was shaped by the voices of 709 young people across 28 countries. And that General Comment reminds governments that the rights of children enshrined in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, in terms of protection, participation, health, education, information, all of those things apply as much online as they do offline. Children have the right to explore, to learn and to connect online, but they also have the right to be safe and protected from harm and have their well-being promoted. So the findings of this report speaks to that General Comment, and it tells us that nearly all children and young people in Northern Ireland are on social media, and for many it is central to their lives and their friendships and their learning and their leisure. More than half of 16-year-olds told us that they had experienced harmful or illegal behaviour online, from bullying, stalking, harassment, to grooming and non-consensual sharing of images. And that's a trend. We've seen this trend, we've heard it in other reports. When I am out engaging with children and young people, I am often alarmed as to what is normal, what is seen as normal. And particularly when talking to young women, what they're exposed to, what they're asked for, and things that are shared. I read a report recently, I can't remember the statistics, but it pointed to the numbers of children and young people seeing porn, and often violent porn. And these were things that they didn't seek out. These things landed in their feed without searching for them. So those things are alarming. We also know that children and young people from an LGBTQIA+ background, and those with disability and from disadvantaged areas are at greater risk. And we can't ignore the mental health impact. And I think there's still lots of work to be done here. We need more research. We need to understand more the mental health impact on children and young people, and on society at large. And we're still finding out that. But the report does. You can see a clear correlation there between mental health and screen time. So children are telling us that the spaces they spend a lot of their lives in are not designed with their rights and their safety in mind. And this is why the Online Safety Act is so important. It creates a legal duty on platforms to protect children. It requires companies to remove illegal content, prevent children from accessing harmful material, and to be transparent about how their services are designed. And it's great to see Wimpy here from Ofcom. Nikki and others are working closely with Ofcom. And I'm really, I suppose from my perspective, given that a lot of the new changes have happened just in June around the age verification online, we want to monitor that closely and to see its impact. Molly referred to algorithms, and although I'm not a tech expert at all, I often wonder if an algorithm can give me harmful content or can give me content based on things that I'm searching. Surely it can do the opposite. Surely big tech has the capability to provide more protection around some of that harmful content. So yeah, in terms of today and my role, I'm looking forward to the dialogue today, but I think initially there's 5 key things that I want to ask government to think about, or calls for government. And the first one I've alluded to, and that's to protect children from harm and to fully implement the Online Safety Act and demand that platforms design safety in from the start and not just as an afterthought. The second call on government is to invest in children's health. Minister Nesbitt has just left us, but I know he's doing a lot of work in terms of health transformation, but sometimes children are invisible or lack visibility in transformation, and we would like to see more emphasis on children's health there, recognising the impact of digital harms on mental health and well-being, which would include resources for timely mental health services for children. We need to educate and empower children and young people and provide them with high quality digital literacy, and not just warnings about the risk, but tools to critically navigate and challenge and thrive in the online world. And I want to mention, as part of that education piece, RSE. I've spoken about this before in forums like this, but it is worrying to me that religion and sexuality education in schools, relationship and sexuality education in schools is sometimes seen as contentious. But I think that relationships piece is so important. When we talk about boundaries, when we talk about what's appropriate and what's not, when we think about Northern Ireland being the most dangerous place for a woman to live in this part of Europe, and we think about some of the news recently about this place being one of the least diverse parts of the UK, so that relationship piece and that education piece is so important. My fourth call to government is around tackling inequality. So we need to address the fact that girls, LGBTQ, young people, those who are disabled and from poorer families face higher risks online. An online safety policy must not leave those most vulnerable behind. And the fifth call we've talked about already, and this report does it so well. It's about the voice of the child, and credit to the over 2,000 young people who participated in this piece of research, because as I said earlier, we are digital migrants, young people are digital natives, and we need to listen to their voices in shaping policy. They are experts in their own lives, and their voices must guide the solutions. So in conclusion, we have General Comment 25, which reminds us that the digital world is real and a real place for children. We can't simply tell them to log off. And indeed, 5 years ago, COVID-19 changed many things, but it also forced young people online. Education went online. We all started doing our work calls. Teams wasn't a thing back then, I don't think. Well, it wasn't for me anyway. Google Classrooms, all of those things have rapidly developed. So we need to embrace the online world, and we do need to, in my opinion, fully incorporate the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child into domestic law, because there are various articles within that speak directly to the online world in terms of information, young people's right to access information, young people's right to be protected, and in terms of how their data is shared or not shared, but overall how their safety, young people's safety is paramount, and through full and direct incorporation of the UNCRC, I think we would be in a much better place. So yeah, let's make Northern Ireland a place where children can go online with confidence, where they can have their rights respected and where their safety is protected, and that their voices shape our future. So look, thank you again to the researchers, thank you to everyone who's been involved in this event and this report, and I look forward to the dialogue throughout the day. And a massive thank you to Molly for speaking as well.
Thank you very much, Molly and Chris. And Chris, absolutely, thank you for reminding us that this is actually a rights issue. As I said earlier, we are absolutely delighted to have two ministers here today. Minister Long has arrived. I will personally take this as a sign that decision makers and policy makers are taking this serious, and I'm certainly committed to follow up on that. Minister Long, we are delighted to have you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the invitation to join you here today, and thank you to Molly, I think, who kind of brought into focus what this really means for young people. This is the world that young people inhabit. It is part of their daily lives. Being online is not the exception, it is the norm. And so ensuring that our young people are safe requires us to ensure that they are safe when they are online. Congratulations to you as well on your acceptance to this university, and I wish you all the very best for your future career. It's good to be here today with so many dedicated individuals who share that commitment to advancing online safety to safeguard children and young people. Technology continues to evolve at an unprecedented pace. We all benefit from positive advancements it brings, but it's equally important that we remain vigilant about the potential risks associated with its misuse. This is going to make me sound incredibly old, but I look incredibly old now, so there's no point trying to cover it up any longer. When I started secondary school, I was the first of a batch of pupils to study computing from first form right through. We were the first generation of young people going through school who were going to have computing as a fundamental part of our learning at every stage. And even then, the pace of change, I was there when people first started getting their ZX Spectrum and having a computer at home, and much like the phone, it was in the living room and everybody could see what was going on. So different from today's world where you have that in your hand. Teachers still used to say things to us like, you need to be able to do arithmetic because you won't always have a calculator. And of course you will, because you'll always have your phone. And so the world has changed, the pace has changed, and the challenges that poses to young people. For me, certainly, I think it's one of the biggest changes from when I was growing up is just the level of exposure that young people get to online content, and the fact that everything they do will be documented for the future. I think back to my teenage years and some of the rather foolish things I did, and standing here before you as a politician today, I'm glad that we weren't constantly online and recording everything that we did. But I understand the challenges that presents for young people who want to engage in social media in the same way as their friends, in the same way that everyone around them does, but also, as Molly, I think, very eloquently explained, the risks that poses when an employer down the line goes and looks and sees a snapshot of who you were at a point in time in your life, and then assumes that that's who you are today, when of course that's not true for any of us. So it is a challenge. And I think we need to ensure that young people can benefit from that involvement. Chris is right, it is a rights issue. There's a huge amount of information and a huge amount of potential out there, and we need to make sure that young people are able to benefit from that. So this research is really, really timely, but it's also very relevant because it's giving us a unique perspective through the voices of young people themselves, which will enable us hopefully to build on our current safeguards and go further. As social media and the internet become more and more prevalent in the lives of children and young people, one of the biggest challenges we currently face is the increasing use of online platforms to groom, exploit, abuse and radicalise our young people. Given the fast-paced nature of technological change, it's really imperative that we're all vigilant, as those with malicious intent will persistently seek new methods to evade detection. The Online Safety Act in 2023 introduced new UK-wide legislation aimed at protecting both children and adults from online harm, because of course Chris is right, it's not just children and young people, though they may be one vulnerable group. But we all tend to doom scroll. We all fall prey to the algorithm. I once watched somebody clean a rug, and now I am constantly bombarded with other videos of people cleaning rugs. I have to say, I don't clean rugs. I just, for whatever reason, found it soothing to watch it once, and now I can't escape it. And it shows how quickly you become trapped by an algorithm just by looking at something once, and suddenly it seems like everybody in the world spends all their time cleaning rugs. And so it normalises often behaviours, and that's how young people get radicalised. It normalises behaviours and opinions that are not widely held in society but are being pushed really hard by an algorithm. So we have to look, and I know obviously Ofcom is responsible for the implementation of the new regulations and continues to publish really comprehensive codes of practice and guidance for providers, including specific measures aimed at protecting children. I personally have been open in saying that I don't believe the Act went far enough, particularly when it comes to online anonymity, because I think that there is a huge amount of harm done from people who hide behind troll accounts and have anonymity. People who say and do things that they would not say and do were they to be able to be held accountable. However, I absolutely welcome Ofcom's recent publication of industry guidance on effective age assurance measures, particularly in relation to preventing children from accessing harmful content such as pornography. One of the other things that I do and have an interest in is girl guiding. So I work with a lot of young women and we have been at various events where they have done research amongst their membership. To hear young girls as young as 7 talk about the fact that when they're online they have seen what they refer to as rude images. But to also hear those young girls between 7 and 10 prioritising what plastic surgery they would like when they're old enough, for me is a factor of the online world, that constantly comparing yourself to others, seeing people's best life and assuming that their life is better than yours, and constantly wanting to have that unattainable image and those views. And it shows how young this is impacting on our young women and our young men. Robust and reliable age verification is absolutely critical, therefore, if we're going to safeguard children from exposure to inappropriate material. I also note with interest Ofcom's ongoing commitment to online safety through the recent launch of the consultation on additional safety measures, an important next step in the implementation of the Online Safety Act and of fostering a safer digital environment for users across the UK. And it's good to see Bimpa here today because I know it's something that she is really passionate about. While partnership working on the strengthening of legislation around online spaces will help protect children and young people, stringent regulation is critical to protect young people from really serious harm. Enforcement and compliance monitoring from Ofcom is absolutely vital in my view. It's also important to recognise that Northern Ireland has already legislation in place to address some offensive behaviours both online and offline, including protections against harassment and malicious communications. In the last political mandate, I strengthened the law in the Justice Sexual Offences and Trafficking Victims Act 2022 with the creation of a number of image-based offences, as well as enhancing the law around sexual grooming and abuse of positions of trust. However, I continue to look for opportunities to provide further protections when and where I can. Previously, I've introduced legislation to strengthen online protections, including criminalisation of cyber flashing and the creation of 4 new offences to target behaviours such as adults pretending to be children online and communicating with a child under 16 with the intent of grooming. Those new offences provide meaningful and tangible protections against both online and offline abuse, because often the divide between what happens online and what happens in real life is paper thin. Online may be the first contact but not the only contact, and so it's really important that we are alert to the risks that young people face in that interface between their online life and their existence in the real world. I'm also extending, with the consent of the Assembly, a number of provisions of the Westminster Crime and Policing Bill to Northern Ireland, including enhancing the law on possession of paedophile manuals and measures which will strengthen the sex offender notification requirements, which most people refer to as the Sex Offenders Register. Subject also to the agreement of the Executive and Assembly, I want to further extend measures in this bill to Northern Ireland, including the creation of a new offence related to fine-tuned AI models designed to produce child sex abuse material, which are known as image generators. This offence will target AI models that have been optimised specifically to create child sex abuse material. And again, this is a culture which normalises online what is unacceptable in real life and is incredibly dangerous material. I'm glad to say there are already protections for children against that type of abuse in Northern Ireland. Under the Protection of Children Northern Ireland Order 1978, it is an offence to take, make, distribute or show an indecent photograph or pseudo-photograph of a child under 18. However, there are no similar protections for those over 18, which is why I recently launched a public consultation on proposals to criminalise those who create, share or threaten to share vile images that have been generated by AI, the deep fake pornography images that so many of us have heard of. That consultation is open until the 6th of October, and I would encourage anyone with an interest in this to respond to it. Minister Nesbitt also highlighted, in reference to the McCartney case, that it is essential to address and remove the barriers that prevent children and young people from reporting or seeking support when they're exposed to harmful or distressing online comment. And I agree with Chris, at least one of those barriers is having strong, robust, consistent and age-appropriate RSE in our schools. We know that when children go through RSE classes, they often feel empowered to ask questions And those questions in themselves can often expose what kinds of material young people are watching online. Young men asking teachers how you can safely strangle your girlfriend during sex is just one such red flag that has been picked up by good RSE education, because we know that exposure to things like strangulation porn is actually affecting young men's expectations of sex when they grow up. And if we don't counter that with the modelling of healthy relationships and healthy sexual behaviours, then you can see very quickly how a young man could innocently become a perpetrator of sexual abuse and a young woman a victim. Victims of grooming and exploitation often don't see themselves as a victim and don't realise that they're at risk of not being recognised as a victim also by some professionals. Young people may struggle to see the exploitative nature of a relationship. They may believe they have a friend or a family or a community online that actually cares for them. And fear and shame can also be used and play complex roles within that grooming relationship. However, the Alexander McCartney case does demonstrate that predators can be brought to justice successfully. And I think we have to take hope from that. We should also be conscious that predators, just as in real life, online look for vulnerability. And many of the victims from Alexander McCartney's case were young people who were struggling with their sexuality, who were struggling with their gender identity. And he exploited that vulnerability, that loneliness, that isolation, in order to exploit those young people for his own nefarious ends. We need to be sure that those young people are not vulnerable, are not isolated, and are able to talk openly with their colleagues in school, with their peers, but also with adults and teachers, and receive the support and encouragement that they need to be able to navigate their teenage years, which is the most difficult period I think any person will ever have to navigate. Online service providers also have to ensure their reporting mechanisms are transparent, easily accessible and taken seriously, with concerns handled promptly and sensitively. Equally important is the need to educate and empower the young people themselves to understand these support systems are there and how they work, and encourage them to use them when that's appropriate. My department, in collaboration with some of our key partners, will continue to address complex and cross-cutting challenges associated with online safety. However, as widely acknowledged, the criminal justice response alone will not be sufficient. Safeguarding children in the digital environment is a shared responsibility across all of government departments. The collective approach is reflected in the Northern Ireland Executive's online safety strategy and its accompanying action plan, which aims to ensure that individuals can engage with the online world in a positive, safe and responsible manner. Online radicalisation has already been referred to, whether that be to the far right or to misogyny or other forms of hate. That needs to be challenged, but it also needs to be challenged because so much of it is algorithm driven. And so many young people who simply out of curiosity read an article or click on something online will find themselves bombarded with the kind of attitudes, with the kind of misogyny, with the kind of racism and extremist views that they would not hear in their school cohort, that they would not hear amongst their peers, but it becomes normalised online. And it is a very dangerous thing for young people to be in those positions. And it's often vulnerable young people who are isolated, who are lonely, who will find themselves exploited by the algorithms. And I think, as Chris rightly says, if the algorithms can drive young people towards things that are dangerous and destructive, they can surely also be used for good. I'm very keen, obviously, to hear from Professor Butler about the key findings from this very important research, and I want to extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to the researchers and those involved in the publication of the report, but particularly to the young people who very generously shared their thoughts and experiences. Their contributions, more than anyone else's, will provide the invaluable insights that are instrumental in shaping future efforts to ensure that children and young people can enjoy all of the benefits of the online world, all of the opportunities that it presents, while remaining safe, informed and vigilant to the potential risks, able to thrive and to flourish both online and offline. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. I'm not as tall as Dirk, as you can probably tell, so I have to reduce the microphone down. So thanks a million for everyone who has come today, and for the ministers for their input, and Chris and Molly and everybody else who's going to be speaking today. We really appreciate your participation in this event. So I, as Dirk has already said, I'm going to talk you through some of the findings from the report, but it's important to note that there's much more in the report, so we would encourage you to take the report away with you today, as you've got the copies on the seats. Before talking you through some of the findings, just going to let you know what were the types of questions that we asked the young people. So we asked the young people to tell us about how much time did they spend on social media on average on any particular day. We asked them about the types of social media apps that they used. We asked if they had experienced a range of different types of illegal and or harmful behaviours. If they had experienced these behaviours, we asked them about information about the perpetrators of those behaviours. We also asked them questions about whether or not they believe these types of behaviours were more likely to occur on some social media apps than others, and we provided a free text response area where they could fill in their thoughts or their experiences about this, naming some of the apps or their thoughts about why those behaviours might be especially common on those apps. Likewise, we also asked them if they thought that certain groups of people were more likely to engage in these behaviours more so than others, and we provided a free text response for them to write down their thoughts, their experiences, their ideas about if this was the case, who it was, and maybe why they thought those people were more likely to engage in those behaviours. Next, we asked them about whether or not they thought young people were likely to engage in these illegal and or harmful behaviours themselves on social media. And we also asked them about their perceptions of how competent they thought young people would be if they encountered these behaviours on social media, and how competent they would be to deal with these behaviours. Lastly, there was a space for any further comments if they felt there was any other information that was relevant that they wanted to include. So that just gives you an idea of the questions that were asked in the survey. So one of the first things to note here is just the amount of time that people spent online, and Molly's already alluded to this in her presentation. And one of the first things we found is the vast bulk of young people are spending a lot of time on social media. So there was only 2% who said they didn't use social media and therefore didn't spend any time on social media. Over 3/4 of the 16-year-olds said that they spent at least 3 hours on any one average day on social media, with nearly 46% spending between 3 to 5 hours, 22% spending between 6 to 8 hours. You can see there as well 8% spending more than 8 hours. 5% who said they didn't know how much time they spent, and 18% saying that they spent less than 3 hours. So we can see that a lot of young people are spending significant amounts of time on any one average day on social media. Next, we look to see whether some groups were more likely to spend longer on social media than others. And what we found here, as you can see in this slide, this is giving you a percentage breakdown by gender, is that we found that females were actually more likely than males to spend longer on social media, especially 6 hours or more on social media. We also found that same-sex attracted respondents, especially male same-sex attracted respondents, were likely to spend longer on social media, as well as those from less well-off family financial backgrounds. Some of the young people also completed, about half, also completed questions on mental health, their health and well-being. And so for those who had completed that section of the survey, we looked to see if there was a relationship between their time spent on social media with their mental health and well-being. Mental health and well-being was assessed using two main methods. The first one was the 12-item general health questionnaire. This is the GHQ, you can see on the slide. And the second mechanism was by getting the young people to self-assess their own health and well-being. So we asked the young people how they had been feeling, and they could choose excellent, very good, good, fair, or poor. Based on the young people's responses to the general health questionnaire, we were able to look at how many young people had been experiencing poor mental health in the last few weeks using the GHQ 12 caseness score. So when you see GHQ 12 cases, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how many people were experiencing poor mental health in the last few weeks. Now, we did find a relationship between time spent on social media and mental health, both as assessed through the general health questionnaire and young people's self-assessed responses. But it's important to note that from this research we can say what was the cause of that. So we see a relationship, but we don't necessarily know what's causing that relationship. Okay, so as you can see from the slide, what we found was that the more time people spent on social media, the poorer their mental health tended to be. So if we look at the slide there, you can see for those people who said they used social media for more than 8 hours, and 59% of those were identified as experiencing poorer mental health in the last few weeks. This contrasts to 35% of those who said they used social media for 3 hours or less, as well as 16% of those who said they didn't use social media. And we see a similar pattern with the young people's self-assessed responses. So 59% of those young people who use social media for 8 hours or more self-assess their mental health as fair or poor, in comparison to 24% of those who said they use social media for 3 hours or less. As I said at the beginning, we can't say the causes of this relationship from this research, we just can see there's a relationship. It could easily be that people who are experiencing poor mental health are going on to social media and spending longer on social media. It could also be that time spent on that it's something else that's causing that relationship. So it might be that the more time somebody spends on social media, the more opportunities they have to encounter illegal or harmful behaviours, which in turn might be what's impacting on their mental health or well-being, or some other factor that we don't know yet. So it's really important that further research is done to investigate the causal reasons for this relationship further. Next, we looked at what were the different types of social media applications that the young people were using. So you can see there that nearly 9 in 10 young people were using Snapchat and TikTok, just over 8 in 10 were using Instagram, and just over 7 in 10 were using WhatsApp and YouTube. While you can see that the pattern of usage is kind of similar across the genders, you can see that females are slightly more likely than males to say that they use Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok, while males were more likely to say that they had used X or Twitter or YouTube. So next we asked young people about if they had experienced a range of different illegal and or harmful behaviours, and over half, 54% of young people reported experiencing these behaviours. So you can see on the slide here a breakdown of the different behaviours we asked about by the percentage of all the young people who said they had experienced it, as well as a breakdown via gender. So I'll just talk you through these. So you can see that just over 1 in 4, 26%, reported experiencing having someone post or share material which they found offensive, indecent or obscene. You can see that just over 1 in 5, 21%, had experienced someone sharing their information, photos, videos with others without their consent. 20%, 1 in 5, had experienced someone stalking their activities. Just over 1 in 8, 13%, had experienced someone attempting to build a relationship with them to try to manipulate them. Just under 1 in 8, 12%, had experienced someone posting or sharing material motivated by hostility, dislike towards their race, religion, sexual orientation, disability and gender. Just over 1 in 10, 11%, had experienced someone posting or sharing threatening, intimidating or harassing material about or towards them. Just over 1 in 10, 11% had experienced offers to buy or sell illegal or stolen goods. Just 1 in 11, 9% had experienced blackmail. Similarly, 9% or 1 in 11 had experienced someone being deliberately dishonest to obtain a financial personal benefit or cause that person to lose something. You can see there that 1 in 12, 8% had experienced someone using their information on social media to hack into their accounts, and 1 in 25, 4% had experienced someone using their information on social media to steal their identity. While you'll notice, you might also notice, if you look at the breakdown via gender, that in a number of these, females were slightly more likely than males to experience this behaviour, but in particular, females were more likely to experience someone sharing material which they found offensive, indecent or obscene. They were more likely to report someone stalking their activities, and they were also more likely to report someone attempting to build a relationship with them to try and manipulate them. At the bottom there, you can see that 46% of the respondents said that they had not experienced any of these behaviours, they'd never experienced any of these behaviours. So we looked at the people who said they had never experienced any of these behaviours to see if there was some groups, more so than others, that were less likely to say they'd never experienced it. In other words, these groups would be more likely to have experienced illegal or harmful behaviours. So what we found was that same-sex attracted respondents, those who reported having a disability or long-term illness, those from less well-off family financial backgrounds, females and those for grammar schools, were less likely to say they had never experienced one of those behaviours that we had just talked about on the previous slide. So in other words, same-sex attracted young people, those who reported having a disability or long-term illness, those from less well-off family backgrounds, females and those who had attended grammar schools, were more likely to have experienced one of the behaviours that we had just previously been talking about. As I was saying to you at the beginning, within the questions, we had a number of sections where people could share their own thoughts or experiences, so free text responses. So about half of the young people actually shared a lot of material in these comments. And so we also analysed these comments. And within these comments, the young people talked a lot about the behaviours, illegal and harmful behaviours they had experienced on social media. Many of these behaviours corresponded to the behaviours that we had deliberately asked about in the survey, but there was some others that were identified. So what's listed on the slide was actually those behaviours that the young people wrote about in the survey themselves. So you can see there blackmail, bullying, discriminatory, prejudicial behaviour, exploitation, fighting, fraud, grooming, hacking, harassment, hate speech, misinformation, phishing, selling illegal goods, sexual harassment, sharing inappropriate obscene content, sharing content without consent, stalking, theft, threatening behaviour and verbal abuse. Within the young people's written responses to these questions, in particular they talked a lot about experiencing sharing of content without consent, being exposed to obscene and indecent material, blackmail and bullying as well. Within these responses, some of the young people also talked about the impact of being exposed to these behaviours had on them. So in the words of one young person there, you can see, and this is where I adjust my glasses between near and far, social media, in my opinion, is very manipulative, and younger people who have access to it are believing so much stuff that is completely wrong, e.g. videos created with certain topics, body issues, and bullying people into looking a certain way to attract other people. It is making more people develop mental health issues like depression and anxiety with a sense of not feeling good enough for anyone, or even eating disorders in which people may starve themselves because they think they are too overweight, or people eating too much because they feel too thin. Bullying people because of the way they look is never acceptable. People feel like others have to be a certain size or have certain features to be worthy of being seen as a human to them. It's unreal. We also looked to see if there was any relationship, and again it's a relationship, we can't say what is causing what, between experiences of certain types of illegal and harmful behaviours on social media with participants' mental health as assessed by that GHQ-12 caseness score. And what we found was that certain behaviours were strongly associated with poor mental health. So of the young people who had experienced attempts to build a relationship to try to manipulate them, 72% of those young people were experiencing poor mental health. Of those young people who had experienced posting or sharing of threatening, intimidating or harassing material about them or towards them on social media, 70% of those young people were experiencing poor mental health. Young people who had experienced posting or sharing material motivated by hostility, dislike towards their race, religion, sexual orientation, disability or gender, 66% of those young people were experiencing poor mental health. And then similarly, of those who had experienced someone stalking their activities, 66% of those young people also experienced reporting poor mental health. We then asked young people if they thought that these behaviours were more likely to occur on some social media apps than others. And while the respondents felt that these behaviours could occur on any social media application, Over 3/4, 76%, felt that it did tend to occur on some apps more than others, as you can see there. And in particular, in their free text responses, they highlight a number of factors that they believed was contributing to this behaviour being more likely to occur on some social media apps than others. And in particular, as you already alluded to, they really highlighted the anonymity, and they said that social media apps which made it easier to be anonymous and better facilitated anonymity, that those were the apps which were much more likely to see illegal and or harmful behaviours occurring on. They also highlighted social media apps which maybe had less rules or less moderation of content, as well as inadequate enforcement of their own policies, as being apps which were more likely to see these behaviours occurring on. And some of the young people even questioned whether maybe sometimes that was intentional by companies as a means of driving up user engagement with their particular apps. And the young people in particular really highlighted the different features of apps as being a really important factor in this. They highlighted how different social media apps were known for different features. And so, for example, they would highlight apps which were maybe very easy to use, easily facilitated the taking of photographs and videos and sharing it with large groups of people without, just in a few seconds, that was very intuitive to use. They also really highlighted the auto-deletion of content. So those apps which had features which automatically deleted the content were seen as being particularly attractive for illegal and or harmful behaviours because the evidence was gone. In addition, they identified things such as the extent to which social media apps had their users visible and easily searchable and easily to be contacted by others, as a ways of encouraging and normalising interactions with strangers or unknown others online as well. Another thing that they really highlighted as well was how certain features of some social media apps could perhaps encourage a perception that this app was safer than others to share maybe more intimate material on. So, for example, the use of encryption or the ability to be able to kind of control for how long someone could see a message, or screenshot notifications. And they really highlighted how this could contribute to a false sense of security, because they had numerous examples of people who would take the screenshot anyway despite the person being sent the notification, or would use a different device within the home to take the picture of that intimate photograph or video or whatever information they might have been sent, and then spread it around without anybody ever seeing a notification that it had been screenshot. In addition, they really highlighted the extent to which it was easy to create fake accounts on some social media apps, as again contributing to illegal and harmful behaviours, with those apps in which it was easier to create fake accounts, therefore having more illegal and harmful behaviours. And they also then highlighted the popularity and user profile of the app as being an important consideration as well. In particular, they highlighted that if some people were looking to target particular groups, sorry, I'm not quite sure what has happened there. They highlighted how, for example, if people wanted to, say, for example, focus on younger children, they would target those apps that were very popular with younger children. So, for example, Roblox or different games like that. So they were very much focused on who was using those apps, what were popular apps, and so that they would be able to deliberately target their intended victims. So within this then, the young people were able to identify variations in illegal and harmful behaviours that they could see occurring on different social media apps. So this is just one example. There was many examples in the research. So in the words of one young person, anything discriminatory and things that happen via text message will be more on Snapchat and Instagram because of the direct messaging, and also because on Snapchat the messages can disappear. Anything about harmful content being posted would be on TikTok because of the fact that the whole app is about posting videos, and also Snapchat because of private stories. Anything about hacking or financial issues can be on any app, but probably Instagram and WhatsApp, because it has a lot of your information. And within the young people's responses, they overwhelmingly identified Snapchat as being a social media app on which they thought that illegal and harmful behaviours was very common, as well as Instagram and TikTok. There was various other, many of, or nearly all of the other social media apps were mentioned, but overwhelmingly it was Snapchat that was mentioned. So, moving on to talk about the perpetrators. So of those who had experienced illegal and or harmful behaviours on social media, we asked the young people to tick who had perpetrated the activities. And the young people could tick as many categories as was relevant for their personal experiences of victimisation. So the first thing that you might notice there is that the most commonly reported individual category was a stranger, with 42% of young people saying that a stranger had been the perpetrator of their particular illegal or harmful behaviour that they had experienced on social media. However, what we saw was that actually over 2/3 of young people identified the perpetrator as somebody known to them offline, so somebody who they knew, to see, to interact with within their communities. So you can see there that 29% said that it was a friend or a classmate, 17% said it was another young person known to them offline in their communities, 15% said it was an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, 2% said it was a current boyfriend or girlfriend, 2% said it was a family member, 2% said it was another adult known to them offline in their communities. You'll also see there that 14% said it was someone who they had met on social media. It wasn't a stranger because they had previously engaged with them. 14% also said that they didn't know who the perpetrator was, and 7% said they'd prefer not to say. We also asked young people about their perceptions of how likely or unlikely they thought other young people would be to engage in these illegal and or harmful behaviours on social media. So what you want to kind of focus in there is the blue on that graph. So the blue refers to the percentage the percent of which they thought that young people would be quite or very likely to engage in these behaviours. So maybe I'll talk you through the percentages in a minute. So the first thing to note is that 74% of respondents thought that young people would be quite or very likely to share information without consent. 71% thought young people would be quite or very likely to stalk activities. 61% thought that young people would be quite or very likely to post or share offensive, indecent or obscene material. 57% thought that young people would be quite or very likely to post or share racist, sexist, homophobic, etc. material. 50% thought that young people would be quite or very likely to post or share threatening, intimidating or harassing material. 46% thought young people would be quite or very likely to attempt to build a relationship with someone to try and manipulate them. 39% thought young people would be quite or very likely to buy or sell illegal or stolen goods. 38% thought young people would be quite or very likely to engage in blackmail. 28% thought young people would be quite or very likely to deliberately be dishonest to obtain a financial personal benefit or cause somebody to lose something. 28% thought other young people would be quite or very likely to hack into someone's account using the information on social media. And 23% of respondents thought that young people would be quite or very likely to use information on social media to commit identity theft. So there's probably two main things to notice from this. And I'll start with maybe the less scary one, is that the top 3 behaviours that they thought that young people would be quite or very likely to engage in here matches the top 3 behaviours that the young people themselves had reported experiencing on social media. So being exposed to indecent, obscene information, sharing information without consent, and stalking of activities. The other big thing to notice for this is obviously how high those percentages are. Those percentages are far higher than people's actual experiences of victimisation. And obviously, while this research can't speak to the reasons for that, it does raise concerns about the extent to which young people think that this behaviour is becoming normalised, or that so many young people might engage in these activities, which raises concerns again, as we were talking about that potential being exposed to this, encouraging ideas about this behaviour being normalised. We also asked young people about whether or not they thought that some groups of people might be more likely to engage in these behaviours than others. And even though a lot of respondents felt that anybody could engage in these behaviours because of the anonymity provided by social media, they nonetheless, 80% there nonetheless felt that they could see some people being more likely to engage in these behaviours than others. And in the comments provided by the young people, they identified a number of different groups that they thought might be more likely to engage in these behaviours on social media. So they had males, young or immature people, people with bad intentions, people holding more extreme views, people who needed money, people looking to gain esteem, attention, strange people, people who were confident and popular, people who were bored, people who were looking to escape or deflect or cope with their own difficult situations they might be experiencing in their own lives, people who are coerced, or people who think it's normal or fun. In the responses provided by the young people, they also offered a number of reasons for why they thought these groups might be more likely to engage in illegal or harmful behaviours on social media. And these responses generally fell into 5 different categories. So for emotional reasons, such as fulfill an emotional need, so situational reasons because of particular situations or opportunities that they had to engage in these behaviours, dispositional reasons, so in other words, something to do with the characteristic of the person who is committing it, instrumental reasons, so in other words, people deliberately choosing to engage in these behaviours to obtain some sort of gain or benefit, and for entertainment reasons. So beginning with emotional reasons there, the young people said that particularly that people might be more likely to engage in these behaviours because of feelings of anger, dislike of victim, jealousy, insecurity, to escape, deflect or cope with difficult situations they might be experiencing within their own lives, to seek attention for others, to obtain approval, validation from others. Some of the situational reasons that were highlighted by the young people included that anonymity, the fact that they felt it was very easy to commit. You could be sitting in your own bedroom or on your couch in your room committing this behaviour. They felt minimal consequences. Some said that there was a bit of a peer pressure to engage in these activities. Others talked about how it could sometimes be a reaction to content other people had posted. Others highlighted how they thought that some people lacked awareness of how their own behaviours might be impacting on other people. Others highlighted how sometimes in social media apps it was very easy to search for users and it was very accessible to contact them, and that ease with which you could find other users and contact them was contributing to more opportunities for these behaviours to occur. And then a number of people talked about how they felt this behaviour was becoming normalised. With regards to some of the dispositional reasons that was highlighted by the young people, they talked about how sometimes people had bad intentions, sometimes people were immature, they felt some people were judgmental and felt superior to others and that led them to comment. Likewise, they felt that those who were more confident or held more extreme views, as well as those who were maybe struggling to socially connect with others, might be more likely to engage in these behaviours. They also talked about how lacking empathy or displaying unusual traits or behaviours, they felt that these could also be possible reasons for why people might engage in these behaviours. With regards to the instrumental reasons that were noted by the young people, they talked a lot about how sometimes it was people were engaging in these behaviours to fulfil their own sexual desires, to obtain money, to gain popularity, to manipulate people, to mislead, trick people, in retaliation for a past harm that had been caused to them, to gain status amongst peers and to obtain information. And then within the entertainment category, a number of young people explained how they thought, and I should just say, it wasn't just when they were talking about in the responses, they weren't just talking about it being young people thinking it was fun or normal or banter to engage in these behaviours. It was a perception more generally in society and of people. So they argued that some people thought that it might be banter or fun, or it was a way to socialise with others. To relieve boredom was a common one as well, and just some people said to deliberately cause mischief between people. We then asked the young people about the perceived competency of young people to deal with illegal and or harmful behaviours on social media when they encounter them. And you can see there that just under half felt that young people were quite competent or very competent to engage in these behaviours, but just under a third felt that they were not very competent or not competent at all. In some of the responses that were given by the young people within those free text boxes, they suggested that there was a need for more education on social media use. Now, I should highlight that a lot of the young people did acknowledge that they had received training on online safety or about the dangers that could be associated with internet use, and especially with regards to interactions with strangers. But they felt there was a bit of a gap missing in that education that they had been provided with. So in particular, when they talked around the need for more education, their emphasis was really on the need to teach people how to behave appropriately on social media, and to encourage people to think about the consequences of their own actions on social media for other people, as well as to tackle perceptions that such behaviour was normal, fun or banter. And so within some of the responses where young people were explaining why they thought some people might be more likely to engage in these behaviours than others, you can see some of the examples of the quotes from the young people where they were talking about this. So you can see here, young people who are uneducated about the side effects of these harms, mainly because they haven't been taught how to behave appropriately online by an adult at home or in school. People that have not understood the seriousness of these actions. As well, there are people that think that this is normal and even funny. I think people that are surrounded by others who already behave badly online are more prone to engage in these behaviours, as the consequences are not often highlighted to them, rather as always the dangers that are taught to us. So, to conclude, this data, as Dirk was already saying, provides some important baseline in terms of policy making and allows us to hopefully see these behaviours being minimised as we go forward, and especially with the implementation of the Online Safety Act. It also gives some insights into what platforms may need to be focused on and the factors contributing to the occurrence of illegal and or harmful behaviours on social media. It kind of highlights how being exposed to offensive, indecent or obscene material, having content shared without consent, the stalking of activities, bullying and blackmail dominated the personal victim experiences of the young people. Also, while it did highlight that strangers could often be the perpetrators of these activities, over 2/3 of 16-year-old respondents knew their perpetrators offline, suggesting a need to tackle these behaviours within communities. Female, same-sex attracted young people, particularly same-sex attracted males, and young people from less well-off backgrounds, they were the most likely to spend more time on social media. And then we also saw that same-sex attracted young people, those with a disability and long-term illness, and those from less well-off backgrounds, females and those who attended grammar schools, were also the most likely to have experienced illegal and or harmful behaviour on social media. And we also saw this link between time spent on social media, people's experiences of illegal and or harmful behaviours with their health and well-being. Even though we can't claim any causal relationship, it really highlights how more research is needed in this area to understand all the different dynamics that might be going on. So, to conclude, some of the recommendations that we have in the report was a need for more awareness raising education in schools and at home, but in particular here we're talking about teaching people how to behave appropriately on social media, encouraging them to think about the consequences of their own actions for other people on social media, and tackling perceptions that engaging in this behaviour might be normal, fun or banter. Need for more research and greater recognition on how social media experiences may affect mental health and well-being. Better reporting mechanisms and stricter sanctions for perpetrators of illegal and or harmful behaviours on social media. Implementation, regulation and enforcement of the UK Online Safety Act 2023. And as a number of people have already talked about, algorithms as we go forward, just monitoring of research into adaptive AI generated algorithms in this area to see what impact they might have on these experiences. And that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for the summary of our results. Now, this is the opportunity now for you to ask questions. And we have a panel. At this point, we are stopping the recording, so none of the discussion will be recorded. And we have a panel of Michelle,